Hello, my friend.
My friend,
How are you? It's good to see you.
it's very good to see you. It's a pleasure for me to be here again.
You know what I said?
¿Sabe qué dije?
Javier Milei is a real
Que Javier Milei
Javier. You know what
es un
Javier is?
verdadero
Yes,
Javier.
yes, exactly.
Javier is a real
Javier
Javier.
es un verdadero Javier.
Exactamente. Gracias.
Well, thank you.
And
Yes.
I feel like a big brother to you. And all Israel is a big nation. And I have a big feeling for Israel.
We feel it. Thank
Yes.
you. We have a big feeling for you in
Nosotros
Argentina.
tenemos un gran afecto por ustedes en Argentina.
בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה שקט, הלב שותק, הנשמה צועקת. שמע ישראל,
Que ayuda viene del Eterno, Creador del cielo y la tierra. No permitirá que resbale tu pie y se dormirá tu guardián. Quiero que sepan que todo lo que hago por Israel lo hago de corazón, porque creo que es la causa justa y porque es la causa de Occidente. Así es que gracias, gracias y seguiré estando siempre a su lado. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjim Word. And I had to play this video as an introduction to this live streaming, although today's live stream has nothing to do with the visit of Milei to Israel, but I found this video very hilarious and cringe at the same time. And I also see it as there's lots of emotional exaggeration happening between Netanyahu and Milei. And Milei himself is really cringe. And he's an arch Zionist. So I'm not really surprised, but sometimes I have to point out to these simple facts about world leaders, because many leaders around the world, their support to Israel is based on ideological and religious affiliation and not about international law or human rights or international humanitarian law, etc. Now, since we're speaking about this case and the visit of Milei to Israel, today's live streaming is going to be mostly about Qatar and its bogus and shadowy relationship with different players in the region for the sake of the American empire. For those who have followed my streams in the past, my videos, my investigations about Qatar, there is an entire playlist in my YouTube channel called the Muslim Brotherhood. If you go, this is a very old one, probably how many years ago? 4 or 5 years ago, I made a series of episodes about the Muslim Brotherhood and the role of Qatar in the region in supporting and bringing Muslim Brotherhood powers after the Arab Spring into positions of power in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Syria, and how the Muslim Brotherhood basically, and by extension Qatar, served the American interests in the region and also the Israeli interests. Now, after I did this series of videos about the Muslim Brotherhood, Al Jazeera, the Qatari-owned channel, they hit me with the hit piece. Basically, they made a documentary called The Assad's Assassins in Europe, something like this in Arabic. And they included my name in it. They spoke about me for like 5 minutes, trying to, destroy my life. Therefore, I truly see that my work has been successful, because otherwise, why would they hit me back with the smear campaign and slandering, especially that most of the things they said about me are factually and completely false. And recently I met a person here in Berlin who was a producer in this same documentary, and this happened like coincidentally, and I didn't even know that he worked for Al Jazeera back then. And he told me that he was one of the producers of that documentary. However, I asked him the question. I said, when you're going to speak about someone, like you're going to speak about Kevork, right? Isn't it right or to contact him? Like, shouldn't you contact me and ask me, or shouldn't I have the right to respond to these allegations? And he told me, but one of the producers told him that he called me multiple times and I said, I'm not interested in responding to your allegations, and that never happened. So legally speaking, I'm also capable of suing Al Jazeera nowadays. However, I'm also very cautious with such things because they have relationship with very radical groups also in Europe, and they could cause a severe harm to me physically, basically. So I don't want to throw basically a stone into the bee's nest because I will be beaten back. And this is something that I learned the hard way, especially that they have all the money in the world to have the best lawyers. So they would drain you financially and they would drain your energy and everything. So I said, okay, then I will do what I do and I will continue what I do, but I will improve my work. And that's how I can take revenge from these attacks. Nowadays, Qatar's position in the region is being exposed and revealed, something that was very difficult only a few months ago to discuss. And this was something that I warned for a long time. And I said, guys, Qatar is a major non-NATO ally for the United States. It hosts the largest American airbase in the region, including strategic bombers. Therefore, it is naive to think that Qatar would play any role in the region that would not serve the American interests, because their regime would be toppled in a matter of minutes. So when you have a TV channel like Al Jazeera, which is funded to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars from the revenues of the gas of Qatar, basically, this is a Qatari government-owned TV channel. So when you have a government like Qatar colluding with the United States, but at the same time establishing a TV outlet, English, Arabic, with different languages, websites, social media accounts, they hire an entire generation of left-wing liberals in the Arab world, just like George Soros did in Europe and in the United States. I see this is a psyop. It's a psychological operation. They are presenting themselves as a champion of the Palestinians or champion of the oppressed people in the region, but at the same time, they are infiltrating their societies, they're corrupting their elites, and basically they're paying to the authors and the journalists a huge amount of money in order to write and speak and criticize basically all the governments in the region except for Qatar. So this is a Qatari weapon in the region, something that after the Arab Spring, many people realized that Qatar all of a sudden shifted its policy and has become a very destructive weapon for hosting many radical imams and sheikhs and giving fatwas to kill basically Libyans, Syrians, Egyptians, because they wanted to bring the Muslim Brotherhood to power. And if the Muslim Brotherhood comes to power in Egypt and in Tunisia and in Libya and in Syria, then you will have an entire belt of countries from the Levant, from Syria, all the way to North Africa, basically in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Algeria, afterwards in Tunisia and in Libya. And if the Muslim Brotherhood ideologically are affiliated with Turkey and financially to Qatar, and when Qatar and Turkey are allies of the United States, then these countries will be definitely under the umbrella of the United States. And the proof of that and evidence for it is now in Syria. What happened in Syria is basically that a non-state actor like Al-Qaeda, they managed to come to power thanks to the money of Qatar, intelligence and military of Turkey, and in collusion with Israel. And now Jolani is the good boy of the United States, and they are basically implementing and executing all the demands of the United States in the region, to the extent that the U.S. Special Envoy to Syria, who is also the ambassador of the U.S. in Turkey, only yesterday, he called for a protection regime to surround Jolani, because he fears for his safety. He thinks that Jolani might be assassinated, so they want to protect him at all costs. This is the ambassador of the United States to Turkey. This is the special envoy of the US to Syria. They're calling for the protection of Jolani, who had a 10 million bounty over his head only a few months ago by the United States. Make it make sense, right? In any way, speaking of Qatar, this week we have a bombshell, basically a report. And this is coming from the Jerusalem Post, guys, who is quoting the Ma'arif. Ma'arif is an Israeli newspaper. Multiple Israeli defense companies have signed contracts with Qatar with state approval to supply the state with weapons, ammunition, cyber technology, and other sophisticated weaponry. This is according to Ma'arif. These agreements were signed with the approval of bodies in the Defense Ministry, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and special approval from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In order to make the sales, the companies were required to get approval from the Foreign Ministry, the Defense Ministry, and the Prime Minister. Netanyahu led this trend and signed the necessary approvals for Elbit, Rafael, and Israel Aerospace Industries in the advanced talks and contracts signed between them and Qatar, a country that heavily affiliated with Hamas. I just want to show you the article before I read you my opinion about this. So this is the article from the Jerusalem Post. Israeli companies sold millions in weapons equipment to Qatar. Netanyahu even approved the deals. In order to make the deals, the companies were required to get approval from the Foreign Ministry, the Defense Ministry, and the Prime Minister, and they got it. So as you see, guys, the collusion between Qatar and basically Israel has come to the surface, finally. This was something that Qatar and its Al Jazeera mouthpiece, they have been critical of the other Gulf countries, basically, Saudi Arabia, like Bahrain, like the UAE, like Morocco, for normalizing ties with Israel. Like Al Jazeera has become a weapon to shoot, to fire bullets, basically, against other governments and other countries for normalizing ties with Israel. But at the same time, they are not only normalizing ties with them, they are buying weapons from Israel. To my knowledge, Saudi Arabia has not yet bought weapons from Israel. UAE definitely bought weapons and cyber equipment, but Saudi Arabia hasn't yet, to my knowledge. In any ways, this is something that is not shocking at all to me, at least. And today I wrote an article about this case on Substack. For those who are on Substack, guys, I'm publishing around 1 to 2 articles per week on Substack. Those are opinion articles about my vision of these geopolitical conflicts in the Middle East and West Asia, and sometimes also about Ukraine and other important geopolitical issues. And speaking of that, tomorrow I cannot promise, but I may and highly likely address the issue of the protests and the riots in LA. And I have a friend who is covering this case on the ground in LA. So I talked to her. I'm expecting an answer. If she agrees to come, I will definitely have her on my show for around 40-50 minutes to speak about this case, whether those were organic protests or not, whether it is a PSYOP, another PSYOP or not, because to be honest with you, I have lots of suspicions about this protest, especially that there are influential people in the United States now pushing for Palantir's AI intervention to crush this type of protest, which if it happens now, it will happen in the future against any protests. Rest assured about that. In any ways, my article is titled, guys, let me see, Qatar, the wolf in Palestinian clothing, doing business with Israel while preaching resistance. If you like to read my article, guys, I'm publishing on Substack under my personal name, Kevork Almassian, so you can find it there. Qatar loves to wrap itself in the Palestinian flag, right? Whether through Al Jazeera's 24/7 pro-resistance narrative or its open-door policy to Hamas officials. Doha has marketed itself as the defender of Palestine in the Arab world. But as always, scratch beneath the surface of this manufactured image and you will find stench of hypocrisy. Qatar, my friends, isn't resisting Zionism. It is buying weapons from it. According to a report by Ma'arif, multiple Israeli defense companies, as I mentioned, including Elbit Systems, Rafael, and Israel Aerospace Industries, have signed weapons deals with Qatari regime. These aren't just like backdoor deals, right? They are official, government-approved transactions, sanctioned not only by the Israeli Defense Ministry and the Foreign Ministry, but personally greenlit by none other than Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So let that sink in. The same Netanyahu, whose troops are bulldozing Gaza into rubble, is facilitating high-tech weapons sales to Qatar, a country allegedly in bed with Hamas. And what are the numbers of these sales? They are staggering. Elbit alone inked deals worth over $100 million. Rafael brought in tens of millions. Israel Aerospace Industries had such a cozy relationship with Doha that its executive flew to Qatar at least 20 times, while a senior Qatari delegation spent an entire day inside the offices of Israel Aerospace Industries. So a Hamas-friendly country hosting its so-called enemies, military industrialists with open arms. I mean, this, at least for me, sounds like business partners more than adversaries. Only the events of October 7 disrupted these ongoing deals, but only temporarily. Let's ask now the real questions, my friends. Can Qatar actually act against Israel in any meaningful way? The answer is simply no. Qatar hosts the largest American military base in the Middle East, Al Udeid Air Base. This isn't just, of course, any like a small installation, right? It's CENTCOM's forward headquarters. This is like one of the most important air bases of the US there. It has strategic bombers. They intimidate Iran. On top of that, the US has designed Qatar as, quote, a major non-NATO ally. So what resistance are we really talking about here? Do you think a regime that lives under the umbrella of US military protection and relies on Washington for its regional relevance will ever seriously challenge Israel? That's a fantasy, right? Qatar serves as a bridge between Western hegemony and controlled opposition in the Arab world. This is the PSYOP that I was talking about for a very long time. It plays both sides, the resistance-friendly image to appeal to Arab sentiment and backdoor deals with the United States and Tel Aviv. The Israeli companies themselves are not even shy about their operations. For example, Elbit openly stated that its international deals follow Israeli Defense Ministry guidelines. Rafael, in typical bureaucratic fashion, refused to disclose partners but confirmed it operates under, quote, strictest international standards. I mean, if I want to translate that, it means basically, yes, we work with Qatar, and yes, our government knows it, now move along. Qatar's duplicity is not like a glitch, right, in this matrix. It's the system working exactly as intended. The regime plays the role of Hamas supporting mediator while simultaneously purchasing Israeli cyber weapons and surveillance tools to crush dissent, possibly even Palestinian dissent. So next time you hear Qatar waxing poetic about Palestinian rights, remember this. No state houses America's war machine and buys Israeli weapons can find or can stand for the oppressed. Qatar doesn't resist Israel. It subsidizes it. It's really not rocket science. This is how I ended my article today on my personal Substack account. Now, Israel, for a very long time, they didn't like the idea that there was a nationalist, leftist, socialist resistance, military resistance against the Israeli occupation forces. And because in the 70s and the 80s, the left-wing scene in the world, they had a reputation. It's not like now. Like France was more left-wing. There were so many countries who were sympathetic with the Palestinian plight. So when a left-wing person back then used to carry out an armed operation or an armed struggle against the Israeli occupation forces, it was very difficult to paint it as a terrorist act, right? So what Israel did, basically, they wanted to Islamize the resistance. And that's when they found it convenient for the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas to be formed in Gaza. I'm not saying that Hamas is an Israeli product, but I'm saying clearly that Israel had a desire to see an Islamic or Islamist group fighting in Gaza, first to find a rift between the PLO and between the Palestinians, basically, by creating a foe, an enemy to the PLO. Back then, the PLO was not like today, a bunch of Israeli operatives, basically. So they found a rift among the Palestinians, and they Islamized the resistance. Now, after Islamizing the resistance, and basically 9/11 happened, because see this rise of this so-called Islamic terrorism all around the world, it happened simultaneously with Afghanistan, after 9/11. And during this time, Hamas started to gain momentum. So it's very easy now to paint all the Palestinian armed strugglers, basically, as terrorists, right? Now that Hamas has been basically fighting for over 1.5 years against the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza, now Israel wants to find another rift, like they're copying the same thing they did in the 80s in Gaza Strip, but this time with Hamas. Now, PLO doesn't have any presence in the Gaza Strip, so they want to find a rival to Hamas. So they fight against each other. And how are they doing that? This is the Israeli plan. So this is an article published in the Wall Street Journal. It says, Israel arms Palestinian militia to counter Hamas. This is very new, by the way. This is on the 5th of June, 2025. So this is only a few days ago. Israel is arming a small Palestinian militia that controls a slice of territory in southern Gaza as part of a plan to build up local resistance to Hamas, offering a glimpse into its post-war vision for the Strip. The head of the militia, his name is Yasser Abu Shabab, has been given arms by the Israeli military that it found inside Gaza during the war, according to an Israeli official. Benjamin Netanyahu, in a video posted to his Instagram page, confirmed that Israel is supporting groups in Gaza opposed to Hamas. Al-Shabaab, which is he is 34 years old, so he's even younger than me, denies that he is armed by Israel and says he is instead backed by the Palestinian Authority. I mean, the Palestinian Authority and Israel are the same anyways. The territory Abu Shabab claims in southern Gaza is under Israeli military control. So they say that he is controlling areas in southern Gaza. We don't know where exactly, but they're in the same places where the Israeli occupation forces already exist. So what they're going to do is to form a militia, even if it's small, and push them into suicide missions, right, against Hamas. After 20 months of war, Israel has failed to fully root Hamas from Gaza, in part because it has never replaced its rule with alternative Palestinian leadership. Netanyahu has said that he instead is seeking local partners on the ground in Gaza who are unaffiliated with neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. But backing Abu Shabab, who earlier in the war ran a gang that looted humanitarian aid, brings significant risks. Hamas accuses him of being a criminal and an Israeli collaborator. He also doesn't appear to have broad political support from the population. The thing with this Abu Shabab guy, whoever this guy is, if you remember in the past weeks, Israel accused Hamas of looting the humanitarian aid. That's why they said we have to limit it because it helps Hamas and do this and that, and they're starving the Palestinian people, basically, right? So they have their own ally of Israel. They do this, and probably even wearing the badges of Hamas, I'm not sure, in order to blame Hamas. Now, You know my position on Hamas, right? I'm no friend of Hamas at all. I'm just saying the facts, stating facts here. It is possible that Israel used this Abu Shabab group in Gaza near the so-called humanitarian corridors when the humanitarian aid comes in to steal and loot this humanitarian aid, to record it and then show to the people that those are Hamas operatives. How would you know? Because they're showing us some drone footage far away in the sky. Nobody will know that. Nobody will be able to verify that. But that's enough excuse for Israel to block further humanitarian aid. And speaking of blocking humanitarian aid, yesterday I was watching a podcast. Whose podcast was that yesterday? I was watching something about Iran and other issues, basically. And every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it was a long podcast, comes an advertisement on YouTube, because I live in Germany. And it's in German, basically. And this advertisement is like 5 minutes advertisement or something. And they're speaking about how Israel is humane, like how much humane Israel is and how much aid they are sending to Gaza and how much the hearts of the Israelis are bleeding over the innocent civilians in Gaza who are taken hostages, basically, by Hamas. The ridiculousness of that advertisement was so beyond surreal. But if you're a German and you know nothing basically about the Gaza Strip, and this advertisement is being recycled and circulated over and over again on YouTube, then you would think it's true. You may think it's true, and I think many people think it's true. And this is a paid advertisement, basically. And who is paying for it? Who is paying for it? Right? Now, there is something very important that the Wall Street Journal never mentioned. Was it in the Wall Street Journal? Let me just... Yeah. So the first article that I showed you was in the Wall Street Journal, right? But there was a very important piece of information that they didn't mention in this article. So this Abu Shabab, he's not only like a gang who looted and did some criminal activities in the Gaza Strip. He's more than that. This is a second article titled Netanyahu wisely. John Spencer, he called it wisely, arms Gaza clans to fight Hamas. He says, wartime alliances are rarely clean. They are judged not by ideology, but by whether they advance the mission. In Gaza today, the mission is clear: destroy Hamas as a military force and the governing power. So let me translate it to you. The ends justify the means. Even if the mean is supporting ISIS. Did I say ISIS? Is this guy really ISIS? Really? Let's continue and see. Against this backdrop, arming rival clans makes strategic sense. It fractures Hamas's monopoly on force, empowers Gazans to defend themselves, and denies Hamas safe haven in the communities it once ruled through terror. There are risks, he says. So, look, the risks are only 3 words. He doesn't even mention what are these risks, but they always are when empowering non-state actors. We should seriously consider claims like Mr. Lieberman's that Israel may be arming ISIS-linked factions. What? ISIS-linked factions? Israel arming ISIS-linked factions? Like, I thought ISIS and Israel are arch enemies, and Israel is fighting Islamic terrorism in the region, and that Hamas is ISIS, right? This is what they said about Hamas. Hamas is ISIS. We heard that thousands of times since October 7. So now Israel is arming an ISIS-linked group, but Hamas was ISIS, so Hamas is not ISIS. What is happening here, right? Critics were vocal when Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, a former member of Al-Qaeda with early ties to what became ISIS, emerged as the leader of HTS. Today, HTS functions as the de facto governing authority in Syria. So basically, he's saying if the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria can become the president, self-selected president of Syria and serve the Israeli interests, then we can also do it in Gaza. We can arm ISIS. We can give them weapons. Let them fight against Hamas. It's good. They're fighting against our enemies. So who is moving ISIS on the chessboard? I thought ISIS is a Frankenstein that has formed itself, and they're fighting against the United States and Israel. This is what I was told. Maybe I'm naive. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. So the situation, he says, is morally and strategically complex. He doesn't want to say that it is morally fucked up and we're just the bad guys for basically supporting ISIS in Gaza, but he's just framing it in a really nice way, strategically and morally complex. But it underscores a truth about modern conflict. The character of the post-war actor is a secondary concern to winning the war itself. In Gaza, the overriding priority is to defeat Hamas. This is exactly what they did in Syria. The end goal is defeating Assad, Hezbollah, Iran, right? Or was. So it doesn't matter who is fighting against them. Give them weapons, give them training, let them go and fight. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Ahrar Sham, Islam's army, decapitations, burning people alive, putting them in cages, throwing people in the ovens, cooking severed heads on a barbecue grill. Every single word I said is factually true, and there's footage for it. Right? It doesn't matter. We can deal with terrorists. It's fine. Let them fight against our enemies. This is what this author is basically arguing in a diplomatic way. Empowering clans that oppose Hamas, regardless of past affiliations, is a tactical necessity. You don't beat a shadowy, embedded enemy like Hamas without taking advantage of the internal fractures in the society it dominates. Israel isn't arming Gaza clans to build a new government. It is arming them to destroy the government Hamas built. That isn't recklessness. It is fighting a war, and it is working. So basically, just like in Syria, there is a status quo. You want to destroy this status quo, and you know that the people who will fill this vacuum, they will be weak, they will be toothless, so they will be under your feet, right? You will subjugate them, and you will impose your demands. Just like Jolani. The same thing will happen in Gaza. If I'm saying this ISIS-linked group basically successfully fight against Hamas and they somehow defeat Hamas, they will not basically come and they will theoretically fill the vacuum, but they will not pose any meaningful threat to Israel, let alone govern the area. If it's already your ally, then you can basically take over the Gaza Strip and rule it by yourself. And this is the end goal. The end goal is not to end the war. The end goal is to end Hamas and to occupy the Gaza Strip and expel the Palestinians. That's the goal. Now, Netanyahu, of course, he likes... I think I made a video for Benjamin Netanyahu. He's speaking in Hebrew. And he was asked about this case, whether or not he is basically arming an ISIS-linked group. And he said, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with arming ISIS? We already helped them in Syria. Why not help them also in Gaza if they're fighting against our enemies? Take a look.
רק שאלה. ליברמן פרסם מידע ביטחוני סודי לצרכים פוליטיים. התייחסותך?
זה חמור מאוד. כי מה ליברמן הדליף? מה הוא הדליף ופרסם? שבעצת גורמי הביטחון אנחנו הפעלנו חמולות בעזה שמתנגדות לחמאס. מה רע בזה? זה רק טוב. רק מציל חיים של חיילי צה"ל. והפרסום של זה עושה טוב רק לחמאס. אבל לליברמן לא אכפת.
So he says, quote, we activated clans in Gaza that oppose Hamas. What's wrong with that? It's purely a good thing. It only serves the lives of IDF soldiers, but publishing this information benefits Hamas only, yet Lieberman doesn't care. So, by the way, one of our friends say that Saudi Arabia did buy cyber weapons from Israel. Pegasus software was used to track and kill Khashoggi. I think you're right, my friend. Yes, I think you are right. But I don't think they had to even track Khashoggi, because Khashoggi went with his own feet to the Saudi embassy in I think in Ankara, right? Was it in Ankara or in Istanbul? Where are the embassies, by the way, in Turkey? Are they in Istanbul or in Ankara? Ankara is the capital, I know, but I'm not sure where are mostly the embassies are located. But I do agree with you that they have bought this Pegasus and other cyber softwares. I was talking about more weapons, but you're right. This is also a weapon, unfortunately. This is also a weapon. You're right. You're right. Thank you for correcting me on this. Istanbul, Thomas Shiran says. Yeah, so they are in Istanbul. He was in Istanbul. So if we want to analyze this very absurd situation, this article summarizes it. Israel's relative comfort with Daesh. They say Daesh is ISIS. The Israeli colonial project long saw Islamists as a useful ally against communism, fostering religious ideology to undermine secular Palestinian resistance. But while Hamas aren't progressive champions, they are more about national liberation, and they are certainly not the same as Al-Qaeda or Daesh. Now, I do agree that they are not the same as Al-Qaeda or Daesh, but I don't think that Hamas is only about national liberation. I don't believe that Hamas is only about national liberation. Yes, they are for liberation of Palestine, but once they liberate Palestine, if they liberate Palestine, which, to be honest with you, they will not be able to do it, but let's suppose, for an argument's sake, Hamas liberated Palestine, they will include Palestine into this network of Turkey and Qatar alliance in the region. They will not just have an independent Palestinian state for all. They will build a Muslim Brotherhood state. That's the truth of the matter. And I had a lot of arguments. I've been in lots of let's say, discussions with my Palestinian friends, which I owe great respect. I have many Palestinian friends also here. But I don't agree with this issue that Hamas's goal is only national liberation. It's not. It's a broader network of regional alliance with this Muslim Brotherhood powers. So Daesh hates the coalition of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And because Israel does too, it always considered Daesh less of a threat. For that reason, there have been many moments where Israel and Daesh strategically coexisted or avoided conflict. It happened in Syria many, many times. But now, amid the global scholarly consensus that Israel has been committing genocide in Gaza since October 2023, it seems Netanyahu doesn't care what the world thinks anymore. So he's essentially happy to admit backing Daesh fanboys in Gaza. Let's see how he will sell this to the Israeli public, but I have not much of hope from the Israeli public as well, and I think they themselves are propagandized to the core. Now, during this time, once we see this, all this, right, you are aware now who is moving Al-Qaeda and ISIS on the chessboard in West Asia. And you know that the leader and the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria has become the self-selected president of the country, endorsed, supported, normalized, rebranded, polished by the CIA, MI6, NGOs, mainstream press, and many others. Now, funny enough, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the special envoy of the United States to Syria, he believes that Jolani is at risk of assassination. President Donald Trump's point person for Syria says the administration is concerned that Syrian leader Abu Muhammad al-Jolani's effort to promote inclusive governance and engage with the West could make him a target for assassination by disaffected militants. Barak highlighted the threat posed by splinter factions of the foreign fighters who joined Jolani in the lightning campaign that toppled former President Bashar al-Assad in early December. As Syria's new leadership works to integrate these battle-tested fighters into its national army, they are being targeted for recruitment by groups like the ISIS. The longer it takes to bring economic relief to Syria, the more faction groups you are going to have that are going to say this is our opportunity to disrupt. We need to deter any of those possible enemy assailants before they get there. Adding that would require close cooperation and intelligence sharing among US allies rather than military intervention. Barak, who has twice met with Jolani, described the Syrian president as bright, confident, and focused. He downplayed the skepticism about Jolani's jihadist past, praising him as an impressive communicator with a strong poker face. So that's why he's asking for protection, basically. This is what he says. We need to coordinate a protection system around Jolani, because Jolani has been an asset for the US strategy for a very long time in Syria, not only before the regime change, but also after the regime change. He's their guy in Syria, so they want to protect him at all costs. And this talking point that we have to relieve the sanctions, we have to relieve all the restrictions against the Jolani regime because splinter groups may come after him and assassinate him and they replace him. This is all Qatari talking point. And I explained to you how this special envoy of the US to Syria has business relationship with hundreds of millions of dollars with Qatar. He's a close friend of Qatar. Because this is, who's Jolani basically? Where did he get all the money? It's Qatar. Qatar, 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 Qatar. It's always Qatar. The money is from Qatar. So now they want to, eliminate basically any rival groups to Jolani so they can establish a one-state, a one-person rule in the country who has enormous authorities, more than Assad himself. The constitution that Jolani proposed gives him unlimited powers, more than what Assad used to have. So how is this even a revolution for democracy if the outcome is less democratic than the previous regime? And speaking of democracy and all this stuff, right? I will show you a news from Syria. This is fresh from yesterday, right? This is fresh from yesterday, my friends. So this is the Ministry of quote-unquote tourism of Jolani. This is the page. Wizarat al-Siyaha Suriya means the Ministry of Tourism in Syria. They say the Ministry of Tourism issued circulars to ensure public safety and security at beaches and swimming pools for tourists and visitors. So Jolani's Ministry of Tourism says, this is the literal translation, guys. It is required to wear burkini or a swimwear that covers more of the body when on the beach or pools. So women, if you're a woman in Syria, and you want to go to a public beach, you must wear a burkini. You must. You don't have a choice. You must wear a burkini. Completely. So where is this inclusiveness and diversity that they're talking about? Syria is a diverse country. And if we're going to speak about freedom, then people have to have the right to go to the beaches, whether in a bikini or without a bikini, with a burkini or without a burkini. This is what freedom is about. This is what diversity is about, right? However, and this is very controversial, by the way, to say, but I will say it. So the people who support the burkini, right, or the burqa, when they come to Europe, and when a European country like France, they ban burqa or burkinis in public spaces, they call France a racist country, they call them Islamophobes, right? And they say, we want to practice our Like, we want to be free when they are in Europe, although they are the minority here. So when they are a minority in Europe and they want to practice this, let's say, whatever it is called, this dress code, basically, and they're banned, they call this country an Islamophobe and racist, and the people as well. And they say, this is a dictatorship of the majority against the minority, because they are the minority here. But when it comes to Syria, they do exactly the same thing, but the opposite. They impose the burqa and the burkini now on women in Syria because they are the majority. So they're doing the same thing like France did, right, against them. But in Syria, the minorities are indigenous people. Christians and Alawites and Druze and Ismailis and Yazidis and the Jewish people, they are indigenous people in Syria. They are not imported from other countries. They have been there for thousands of years. So they're basically oppressing the indigenous people in Syria now. So this is a dictatorship. These people will never, ever, they will never be able to rule Syria in a progressive or in a democratic way. Because the issue is not in the dress code. Like, Jolani can change his dress as much as he wants. He can wear a tie as much as he wants. He can dress his wife in a really nice way, and she's wearing elegant, right? That doesn't mean anything, because the brains are rotten, and this cannot be changed. And this is the issue with the Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood people. They can look even civilized. They can look Westerner. They can look Easterner. They can look Indian. They can look any other, wear any other culture. The dress code of any other culture doesn't mean anything if this is rotten. And Jolani's brain is rotten. His people who he appointed in positions of power are rotten. And the people who support him, every single one of them, if a person supports Jolani now, after everything he did, he or she is either paid 100% paid to say these things, or this is rotten. There is no other way of saying these things. Haram ala Surya an jad. Haram. So now that we know all these things about Al-Qaeda and ISIS, etc., etc., if I tell you there is a leader from Al-Qaeda now in June 2025, and this person posted a video just recently calling for the assassination of Trump and J.D. Vance and others associated with him. Meanwhile, these protests have erupted in the United States, right? Do you see it as just a normal incident, or do you see it as an intelligence op? Because I see it as an intelligence op. When there are basically protests, riots in the United States, and I don't know if they're organic or not. I'm not going to give an opinion about something that I don't know much. But what I see, that the government in the United States, they're calling them resurrectionists, they're calling them terrorists, they're calling them all sorts of names. Now, during this time, when the government wants to use its military and wants to use its AI, wants to use the technology to suppress not only this protest, but to build on it for the future using AI and Palantir, basically, at this particular time, when a leader in Al-Qaeda in Yemen who fights alongside the American-backed Hadi forces against Ansarullah issues a statement saying that he calls for the people in the United States, whether Muslims or not, to assassinate Trump and J.D. Vance and others. Don't you think this is an intelligence op? That these regional intelligence apparatuses, be in Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Turkey, who are in charge of moving the Al-Qaeda and ISIS on the chessboard in the region, Isn't it a possibility that they're now moving this Al-Qaeda on the chessboard to come and make a video and say, assassinate Trump? So if there is now, I speculate now, a false flag terrorist attack in the United States by Al-Qaeda, but after this statement, in order to say, for the American administration to say, now we have left-wing terrorism and we have an Islamic terrorism, and they would include them both together, and they will impose the most draconian security measures, physical and technological, on the people. This is what I would speculate, and I hope I'm wrong, really. I hope I'm wrong, because if there is a terrorist attack, many innocent people will die. But if it happens, it is going to be a false flag attack, 100%. Now, I'm going to show you the video of this Al-Qaeda operative. And please focus on the subtitles. It's just under his beard or whatever. I mean, his beard. I also have a beard, but it has nothing to do with his beard. So I tried to bring the subtitles and put it on this picture so that you can listen to his words and you can make up your mind. Take a look.
ثم إننا ندعو ومن الآن كإجراء عملي أولي كل مسلم على أرض أمريكا الكافرة المجرمة المتغطرسة، سواء أكان من أصول عربية أم أمريكية أو غيرها، المهم أن يكون دينه الإسلام ونبيه محمدا عليه الصلاة والسلام، والذين بلغ تعدادهم 4.5 مليون مسلما في أمريكا وحدها. نقول لهم جميعا الثأر الثأر، لا تشاوروا أحدا في قتل الأمريكان الكفرة، ولتكن همتكم كبيرة وقائمة استهدافاتكم مؤثرة، فدونكم عتاة الأرض وأكابر مجرميها، فهذا ترامب ونائبه، وهذا مستشاره وداعمه ماليا وإداريا وتقنيا إيلون ماسك، وهذان وزيرا خارجيته ودفاعه وأهلوهم أجمعين، وكل من يمت لساسة البيت الأبيض بصلة أو قرابة.
What do you think, guys, when you watch this video or this statement? Do you think that this guy just acted independently to come now and say we want to assassinate Donald Trump? Or in the context of endorsing and normalizing Al-Qaeda in the region by the allies of the United States and by the United States itself? Donald Trump shook hands with Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the founder and the leader of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria, who has appointed himself as a president. So in this context, if you put this in a geopolitical and regional context, do you really think that this guy in Yemen, right? He's in Yemen, who is fighting against Ansarullah, and he's supported by Saudi Arabia and by the UAE and others, and fighting alongside the Hadi forces, would be just an independent actor? I don't think. I'm not naive enough to believe that. Sorry. So as for tomorrow, guys, I have invited our friend to come to my show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. I hope she can make it. Her name is Jelisa Dugrot, and she has been on the ground in the riots, and she was arrested by the police briefly for reporting. I don't know what's really happening there, but I will definitely try to have her tomorrow on the show, and let's see how this proceeds, because I'm really interested. And if we do this, I will try to play the, let's say, the devil's advocate, you know, like just try to push against some of the narratives coming from the left that this is just an organic scene. So I will play and try to bring opposite arguments and opposite opinions to start, let's say, civilized conversation. And speaking of a civilized conversation, 2 days ago when I spoke with my friend Ihsan Safarnejad from Iran, I was impressed by his analysis, and I learned a lot from him, and I received many good comments, let's say compliments on this conversation with him. And the video was watched by, for now, like around 20,000 people, which is great. So I spoke with Ihsan and I told him, let's do this monthly basis. I'm not saying on a weekly basis, but let's do it on a monthly basis. So if you like to see him more often, please let me know in the comments below, because he would like also to come on Syriana Analysis, and we can cooperate with him professionally. I can have him once per month to speak about Iran and the broader Middle Eastern region, West Asia. And what I like about him is that he's not only an analyst, but he's a critical thinker, and he's not afraid to criticize his own government, which is, I like that, because there are also other brilliant Iranian experts, but they don't criticize their government, right? I want more critical analysis on this channel. I don't want to create an echo chamber and repeat each other's opinions. That's just what I want to say at the end of this. I'm just checking here. Yes. So tomorrow, probably going to be with Jelisa about this case, the protest, and after tomorrow on Friday with Dr. Tarek Chiril Amar. With Tarek, we do weekly podcast conversations about Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Russia, United States, Russia, China, Russia relationships, multipolarity, unipolarity. And again, at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. So if you like to watch that, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. We already surpassed the 100K, I know. But as more people subscribe to this channel, it reaches also to more people. And the goal is to reach the message and the analysis to more people. Fame and all this stuff are not the end goal. If you're a journalist, your goal shouldn't be the fame, but you should use the fame to deliver the voices of the people, to deliver the messages, the analysis to broader audience. That's why I'm kindly asking you to subscribe to Syriana Analysis. I'm very thankful also for the supporters of Syriana Analysis, for the super sticker. Thank you very much. Palestine will set us all free. And guys, if you like to support the work I'm doing, which is an independent 100% on this YouTube channel, there are different means in the description below, like Patreon and other platforms. So we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.